From 50-hour 100% completions of Breath of the Wild to this week's record-breaking sub-100-minute 120-star speedrun of Super Mario 64, speedrunning has become all the rage in the video game community. We've now got entire events dedicated to watching people finish games as fast as possible, with thousands of viewers on hand to witness each historic moment. Given all that popularity, and this week's legendary Super Mario 64 accomplishment, we thought we'd take a very brief look at the history of speedruns and just how this entire craze got started in the first place. For those unaware, speedrunning is, well, it's basically what it sounds like, the act of getting through a game as quickly as possible. Just about anybody can perform a speedrun in any game they want, but according to Speedrun.com, the most popular games to speedrun in terms of players are Super Mario 64, followed closely by Ocarina of Time, with Super Mario Sunshine, Link to the Past, and Super Metroid rounding out the top 5. Lots of Nintendo stuff. That list changes just a little bit when you look at the most popular games by the number of runs completed. Super Mario 64 is still at the top, followed by Super Mario Sunshine, Ocarina of Time, Diddy Kong Racing, and Super Mario World. Interestingly enough, there are actually a variety of reasons why these particular games are popular for speedrunners. Sometimes games become popular to 100% because there are a variety of paths you can take through to get to the end, making the most efficient route more challenging to find. Other times, it's because there are glitches or exploits discovered that allow players to break sequences of the game and skip major portions to get it done as quickly as possible. And quite often, games become popular to speedrun because they're just hard as hell to do fast, relying on the players to save milliseconds at a time with super precise movements. In general, these speedruns tend to come in a few flavors. Any percentage, where it doesn't matter how much players complete before finishing, 100%, which requires completing everything in a small amount of time, and low percent, which calls for at least a minimum amount of the game to be done before completing it. So, alright, that covers the basics on what speedrunning has become, but how did it get started? Well, that credit lies with two particular companies, Nintendo and id Software, most specifically for the games Metroid, Doom, and Quake. Metroid is partially responsible for the idea of speedrunning because it was the first game to incentivize finishing the game as quickly as possible. Considering the game was a bit non-linear compared to other games of its time, it became popular for players to try different routes to finish it fast, shaving off minutes at a time. The 1994 sequel, Super Metroid, took things a step further by incentivizing completion percentages which challenged players to 100% the game. So, while Metroid is partially responsible for creating the groundswell around finishing games fast, id Software's Doom and Quake gave players the tools to record and thus share those accomplishments for the first time. Doom made it possible for gamers to record a gameplay demo of their level playthroughs with a simple command line, and because the files created were compilations of gameplay code called WADs rather than actual videos, they were only a few kilobytes in size and easy to host or share on a newfangled thing called the internet. This made it also easy for other players to download them and view them, which just required loading the demos into Doom itself. Out of those WADs came one of the first sites to record these demos for posterity, the LMP Hall of Fame website, which was created in 1994. From there, recording Doom demos grew in popularity in certain Usenet groups, which resulted in the creation of another site, Doom Honorific Titles. DHT was notable because it had a board of examiners who would review your submitted demo and then give you an honorific title based on certain achievements. And all that led to the founding of Kdin, a similar website that had one specific goal in mind: finishing the levels in the shortest amount of time. So in essence, it became the first speedrunning site. The popularity for completing speedruns continued in a future id Software game, Quake, which was released in 1996, and Quake sort of led to the organization of speedruns into different categories. Demos either became focused on completing levels quickly or completing levels quickly with a completion percentage. The following year, a number of important things happened. Nightmare Speed Demos was founded, featuring fast playthroughs of the game in Nightmare mode, and then later, in 1997, Quake Done Quick. Now, that might sound familiar. That also came about then. What separated Quake Done Quick was that it wasn't just singular levels of Quake, but rather full playthroughs with one master playthrough compiled of all the fastest submitted levels. That master playthrough got tinkered with by users enough to get a third-person camera, and basically became one of the earliest forms of machinima, which some of you may have heard of. Anyway, the Quake scene soon split into factions who thought that the hardest difficulty shouldn't be a requirement for speedrunning, so a new movie was created by another community called Quake Done Quicker, which was a few minutes shorter and featured the game's levels completed on easy difficulty. Eventually, the communities fused back together and became Speed Demos Archive, which you'll know still exists today if you're at all into the speedrunning scene. Speed Demos Archive is still home to a massive library of speedruns from over 1,200 games. So that brings us into the late 90s and the early 2000s, which popularized the speedrunning of two other important games, Ocarina of Time and Metroid Prime. Ocarina of Time in particular became a haven for speedrunners because of its semi-open world nature, which was really impressive at the time, and its wealth of glitches and exploits. It would be impossible to document all of them in this brief timeline, but let's just say that there are hundreds of pages written online about the history of Ocarina of Time and the people who were important in breaking down its speedrunning legacy. Metroid Prime, similar to its predecessors, was also popular with the speedrunning community for some of the same reasons as Metroid and Super Metroid, and became the first game where the term sequence breaking was used in discussion about speedruns. From there, it gets a little bit more tricky to pinpoint exactly how and why speedrunning grew to the point that it has today. There are a number of factors that contributed in the following decade. For one, emulators and ROMs with demo recording capabilities became available on PC, giving people greater access to record and share playthroughs of the games of yore. This also allowed for fans to come together and discuss exploits or brainstorm the best possible routes for completion. Achievements and trophies also contributed to the mania in newer games, challenging players to try wacky things to trigger that sweet achievement sound. There are, of course, other games that came along in the intervening years as well, like the Dark Souls series, which inspired players to finish it as quickly as they could because of its reputation for being insanely difficult. Plus, the advent of web streams and sites like Twitch made it possible for these communities to become more central and watch each other live, reinvigorating the scene and making it more accessible to a wider audience than ever before. And now, speedrunning has become something of a fixture in gaming. It's led to gigantic communities and even bigger events like Games Done Quick, named after Quake Done Quick. Many of those events raise money for charity, with millions donated so far. Awesome Games Done Quick, for instance, raised over $2 million this year for the Prevent Cancer Foundation. So that's just a really quick basic breakdown of how speedrunning got to where it is today, some of the games that were very important in its development. We didn't include some of the other things we could have discussed, like TASBot and tool-assisted runs, what the heck saving the animals is all about in Metroid, and some of the most exciting and notable speedruns of all time, but we can save all that for another occasion. This is just a quick primer on how speedrunning became a thing. So what do you guys think of the history of speedrunning? Any speedruns you'd recommend for people to watch to really get into it? Let us know in the comments.